This word awakening has been used for many different things, to point to many different experiences and kind of recognitions. Awakening is the direct perception that what you are is pure consciousness that is having a human experience and is projecting life as an expression of your own being. It's not a temporary experience, it's not an experience at all, it's a direct and immediate recognition by you, consciousness, to be consciousness. And by consciousness, we mean this pristine awareness that is conscious through the form of life. Recognition that life is one with you. That you are not a limited, separated entity inside the body, but you are this one being that is living through all forms and is manifesting everything out of itself. It's not something that is understood, it's not something that is felt, it's something that is seen where this consciousness is. It's a change of perception from living life as a separated human being to see that you are this pure, empty background that is manifesting itself as everything you see and is living through everything you see. Is a recognition that brings a huge compassion for everything that appears, because it is seen that it's one with you. And it's also a recognition that brings utter freedom from fear, because fear is based on this sense of separation. A new life starts with this recognition. A life in which you don't live anymore from the image of what you are, but you're called to live from your true self and to manifest a life that belongs to the true self, that belongs to the truth of your heart. Sometimes you have glimpses of this, you have moments of intuition, and it's like you open a curtain of a window and suddenly a light shines through the window, and for a moment everything is clear and you see. And then the curtain closes up again and everything seems to be lost. It becomes a memory. You have the memory of that light. The memory of that light is not absolutely the same as living from this recognition. Living from this recognition is a change in perspective, complete change in perspective. The one that believes to be separated is a concept, is an idea, is an image. It's not what you really are. You are that light. You are also actually the force that opened that curtain. And as you live in the imagination of you will believe to be inside that dark room, and you will believe that you need to search for that light. And the paradox is that in searching for that light, you will simply remain inside the room of your mind. That sudden movement that opens the curtain and let the light of awareness shine in and then out. It's not produced by the one that believes to be trapped or imprisoned by conditioning. That movement appears to be coming from divine grace, something outside of you. And as you wake up, you realize that that grace is the radiance of your heart. It's coming from the deep, deep longing in your heart to meet itself. You are not a human being that is looking for God. You are a divine being that wants to meet itself through the human experience. In doing so, you seem to fall in the illusion to be trapped inside this human experience. And because of that belief, it looks like what you're looking for is outside of you. It must be conquered, it must be reached, obtained. There is no awakening for the person. Awakening is the awakening from the belief to be a person. Awakening is awakening from the illusion to be a separate entity. Separation simply is not real. As you start to perceive life for what it is, not through the concepts of the psychological mind, you perceive directly in every moment that this separation simply it's a lie. It's a very strong hypnosis in which consciousness gets entranced, but it's not your direct experience. Nevertheless, living up to this and living up to this in your everyday life takes time. Paradoxically, although this recognition is instantaneous because it's true in any moment, it takes time to living from this steadily, because the conditioning that made you believe to be a separate entity came through time and space. And so it will require time and space to dissolve that hypnosis. But this recognition can happen in any moment to anybody, with no necessity of any prior preparation, because this is true of every human being. At the core of every human being, there is this pure consciousness. Behind the eyes of everybody, there is this pure consciousness. So, in any moment, this can be seen. Living up to this, having this as a steady perception, day by day living, it has maybe some time. It has for sure the willingness to die to yourself completely, to let go of any image, any reference point of what you had of you, and meeting life as it is. Now the beauty is that life is as it is anyway, either that you see it or you don't. But when you don't, you don't see yourself as this consciousness, but you see yourself as a separate entity, you suffer. That's why the longing is there. You long to come back to you. You long to come back to the truth of your heart.
Una domanda: come conciliare questo cambio di percezione verso la non separazione con la necessità di operare dei cambiamenti nel mondo in maniera urgente e importante?
The world we live in is a world that is based on the sense of separation. Because of the sense of separation, what appears is many people, 7 billion of people, that are separated from one another, with all that this implies. Organize them, control them, make them safe, settling conflicts, creating security and restrictions of freedom. What would happen if all these 7 billions of people would suddenly realize that they are not separated from one another? I left to you and to whoever is watching this interview to understand the consequences. Love would be the consequence. The only reason why there is conflict in the world of any sort is because we be believed to be separated. You see robbing, you see rape, you see murder, you see exploiting, you see racism, you see all the crimes and the violence that you see in the world. Is simply coming from something that is not true. And even if it seems true, it's not true. That's why we suffer it. If it was true the separation was real, we wouldn't suffer. Instead, when we see an image on television or on the internet or in any place, that reminds us of what is going on in the world or everyday life experience too, of course, we have an empathic response of suffering. If we don't, it's because we have some problem, medical problem, but a normal human being would say, if it's shown a murder or a rape or any kind of violence, instinctively feels that this is wrong, this shouldn't happen. Immediately feels empathy for those who have suffered that damage. Where this is coming from? Why do we feel this empathy? Because we have an inherent recognition that we are not separated. We're not separated from one another. We have to dissociate from this inherent intuition and recognition to behave in a violent way. So violence, conflict, wars, all this is coming from this dissociation from what is our natural state. When we are a very small kid, and by small I mean until the age of 3, 4, sometimes this starts earlier depending on the conditioning that a person receives. We have this innate fluidity to move towards the world. We have this radiant joy that moves us. We still haven't bought completely in the conditioning of separation. And life is very different. Love moves us. Even when we get angry because somebody maybe took our toys or something like that. Like a moment afterwards we are again in joy. We don't suffer life. We meet life in its purity. As we fall in this idea that we are separated from one another, then we start to pervert ourselves into something that is not natural. And this carries on for the rest of our life because that's the way through which we get engaged in the human tribe, by believing the same lie. Now, what happens if you go outside of this lie? The first thing you experience is fear. Fear to be punished. Because some way this shared conviction, shared belief to be separated has become the base of the way in which we relate to one another. What I see, what has been my experience in the last 15 years of sharing with people, is that there is an increasing upsurging of the recognition that this idea of separation is a lie. Awakening is happening everywhere on the planet. It's happening very spontaneously, outside sometimes of spiritual traditions or religions. It's not happening because we are doing something to make it happen. It's happening because consciousness is waking up. And I find that this is a natural response of consciousness, of the planet. The planet is waking up. We need that.
But also the idea of separation is a game of life, or not?
Yeah. The idea of separation is coming from consciousness too, of course. And this coming in consciousness, because consciousness itself, in its expression from nothingness, that is the base of your being, into manifestation, is exploring this process of individualization. Look at the process of how the universe is created from a no-dimensional, pointless point, Big Bang. The universe is created. And the story starts and it unfolds in fractal developing of oneness into more and more polarities of dualities. They become more and more complex until they create incredible complex being like a human body. But all the time is consciousness that is behind it. Consciousness is the director of the orchestra and also all the instruments. So in this development of consciousness, on a certain point we encountered this process of individualization. But in this process of individualization, we have been falling, and when I say we, I'm speaking about consciousness, not about a person. Consciousness has been falling in this idea to be inside the experience that is experiencing. Don't see this as a mistake. Take it as an experiment. It's consciousness that is experiencing its own creation as if it's inside its own creation. But thanks to this, it can also experience its creature as a creature. Now, what happens if, maintaining this experience of the creature, you are able also to recollect, to remember of your divine nature? What happens is that you are able to access to your divine nature as this human experience is happening. So oneness is remembered and the individual process carries on. This creates a conscious bridge, in a sense, between your deep nature of oneness and this multitude. What you see is that the manifestation at that point reflects this recognition, embodies this recognition, and allows you to step into a conscious creation of yourself. So, in your initial search for truth, you start to find something that makes sense in a world that doesn't make sense. Start to find a place that is safe, that is clear, that gives you a guidance in a world that looks chaotic and very confusional. Because you have a deep intuition that something real is somewhere, but you don't know what it is or where it is. And in this journey you start to search for this question: what is life? What am I? Who am I? And in doing so, you use discernment. You disregard information that don't feel right to you. And love for truth. The love for truth guides you in feeling something that belongs to your heart, that resonates with your heart. And if this journey arrives to the very end, you recognize that you are this pure consciousness that is living through the form. Awakening happens. But then life comes back. Everyday life comes back. And adjusting this recognition to everyday life is the work of a lifetime, in a sense. It's something that carries on for the rest of your days. And in doing that, you're able, for the first time, to meet manifestation from the empty background of your being. And maybe to meet this continuous process of creation that we have been talking about consciously. Because this process of creations happens continuously. It's your nature. You are creating, you are generating this, and you are dissolving it back in you continuously. Not because you want. When I say you, I'm not speaking of you as a person, as the separate entity doesn't exist. I'm speaking to you as consciousness. You are creating this moment right now in this instant. Right now in this moment. All this is a manifestation, is an embodiment of your consciousness. What happens if this occurs in a conscious way? What happens if you're able to see that you are creating this in the moment in which you are creating it? Of course, the creation would reflect your recognition, because all the time creation is the embodiment of your consciousness. So, as you start to live from the true you, this reflects in the dream of life. This is shown in the dream of life. This is the way in which we can change the world. You see? We will not change the world through the filters of the idea to be separated. Those actions will have no effect. But if you work on the dream of life, starting from the dreamer, this has an immediate and very strong effect that doesn't talk to the idea that there is a somebody that can do something or not do something. It will be a change that will start from the dreamer itself. So, let's use the metaphor of the dream to understand why I say that no action coming with a filter of the sense of separation can be effective. If you're dreaming a dream, and during your dream, the dream figures of your dream are doing something, it's not the action of the dream character that you believe to be that are going to change the behavior of the other people, right? But when you wake up in the morning and you realize that what you have been seeing was a dream, it's clear that the behavior of the character that you believe to be and the behaviors of the other people in the dream were depending only upon your own consciousness. If in your own consciousness there was something that was going on that was, let's say, dreadful or scary, maybe the entire dream is going to be tainted by that fear. Now, we can believe this or not, and it's not about belief, it's about seeing. But it's possible to see in this moment, in this level of manifestation, that this is a dream, that is not real, that you're not at all the characters that you believe to be. And all the other people appearing and everything else that is appearing here is purely and only an embodiment of your own consciousness, exactly as in the dreams that happen by night. This has been said by many people in many different ways throughout the centuries, because every now and then consciousness wakes up through a form. Now, in the dream, sometimes you dream about wanting awakening, wanting enlightenment. And it's clear that the dream character is never going to wake up. I mean, the dream character can dream about awakening, yeah, to have personal awakening, but of course, it will be a dream. So, what is that can change the world that we see? Waking up to the fact that this is you. All this that you see is you. The people you meet are you. The life you meet is you. The planet is you. The universe is you. There is no separation anywhere. And this cannot be a mental conclusion, an intellectual gymnastic. It must be your living experience of the moment. How can this happen? Dying to yourself. Dying to the images you have of yourself. It's not a death that involves the body, of course. The body is a beautiful temple of the divine. It's a beautiful dream machine through which we can experience all this. But letting go of the ideas about you, letting go of the ideas about life is what is asked. How to die to yourself? Well, the same force that ignites in you the desire for truth is the same force that will orchestrate everything all around to allow you to come closer to what you are, and at a certain point being able to let go of something. You cannot let go of yourself as a dream character. The dream character cannot drop itself. You know, sometimes we hear about letting go. You cannot let go of you. Something that seems to be outside of the scene intervenes. Now, this outside force is the real you, is the one that all along have been watching the dream, have been experiencing the dream as if you are inside the dream, and switch off the illusion and switch on the light of understanding. And you are feeling this force right now, otherwise you would not have questions. So this force is operating, but you have become so estranged upon yourself that it looks like it is something outside of you that is guiding you. This force outside of you that is guiding you is you. I know it sounds very confusing, maybe say it like this, but basically you suffer of a case of mistaken identity. You believe something to be something you're not. And because you are simultaneously watching life and at the same time experience it is as if you are inside of it. This experiencing life as if you are inside of it confuses you, drags you in the idea that we are separated. As you come back to what you really are, as this recognition happens, this individual experience carries on, but is no more trapping you in a lie. It becomes the expression of what you are. It becomes the embodiment of what you are. It becomes, in a sense, the glory of the divine. You can become able simultaneously to be conscious of your divine nature and let it express through your human experience. I don't know if this replied to your question or if it's clear.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want, Ravi, you can make questions. Let me speak a bit more about creation. When I speak about creation, what I say has nothing to do with like law of attraction or a conscious creation that belongs to a separate entity. This is a mistake that appears because you have the intuition that your being is creating all this, but it's still filtered by the idea that you are a separate entity. So it looks like you personally are creating life. You don't create life personally, as well as you don't choose which dreams to have at night. They appear in your consciousness. They are a movement of your consciousness. In the same way, you don't create consciously life as a separate entity, but you can become conscious of the process of creation as a movement of your own being. That is the key. That is what changes everything. If you suddenly see that all is around you is you, your way of relating to what is appearing, the entire way in which your life unfolds will be reflected in this recognition. And we could experience a very different world. A world that doesn't belong to the ego, to the sense of separation, but belongs to love, to our true nature.
May I ask to you about compassion in daily life?
Yeah. Seeing yourself everywhere is compassion. Seeing as everything that appears in life is done by this one consciousness is compassion. Seeing that even mistakes and errors that you see appearing in the world, even the violence, even the most horrendous actions, are actually coming from this consciousness lost in the idea of separation. Seeing that is compassion. Compassion is your ability to include everything you see in you as you. That's compassion. In your everyday life, you start to see this, spreads in everything, in any kind of meeting, any kind of relationship, your family, your work life, your relationships, everything, nature. You see, compassion is something that is appearing all the time, How much is compassionate the wind to blow and make things fresher, or the sun that shines, or the moon, or the force that make flowers grow, or make them bear fruits. It's a force that is already acting all the time. The compassion that makes animal walk or hunt. When you see that everything is coming from one being, also contradictory elements are actually moved by one being. There is only compassion. Compassion starts to be recognized in you all the time. You have compassion for yourself and everything, and you see that this is the only force that moves the universe.